Well, Dr. Ruvin, it's an absolute pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with you. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Ruven Бар-Он, who's one of the world's leading experts on emotional intelligence. But rather than me tell people who you are and what you do, can I turn it over to you, Dr. Бар-Он?
Okay. I've been involved in this area today we call emotional intelligence. I refer to it as emotional social intelligence, but this particular area I've been involved in for probably going back to the late 70s, early 1980s, and I've been involved in a number of basic areas, primarily the definition of this concept and the way to measure or ways of measuring it, as well as applying it in various settings. I think that you would probably like to know what is the difference between emotional intelligence and emotional social intelligence. Is there a difference between the two I just mentioned? And emotional intelligence is a term that was first voiced probably in 1966 by a psychologist by the name of Paul Lerner, and later it became more prominent in the literature based on an article that Peter Salovey and Jack Muir wrote in 1990, when they first started to define this particular area. Emotional intelligence, I think, is a misnomer. I think that there's been many different terms for this particular concept over the years, starting all the way back to Charles Darwin in 1872, and all the way up to the present. I think it's a misnomer because we actually do not reason with emotions. Emotions are translated into feelings, which are second-order emotions. What we think about are emotions and why they occur. And so we actually think with feelings rather than with emotions. So it is a misnomer in itself. And also there has been attempts of defining what has been called social intelligence since 1920 by Edward Thorndike. And if you look at the definitions of social intelligence from 1920, from that period on, they're very similar to the first definitions that we see occurring after 1990 of emotional intelligence. Secondly, it's hard to separate the emotional intelligence from social intelligence. Emotions develop in young children, infants, and they're quite often an expression of dissatisfaction. They want to eat, they're wet, they have to have their nappies changed, and they want to be held and cuddled. So there's, in the beginning, sort of a very egocentric type of expression and use of emotions, but very quickly an infant, a young child, learns that there's other people around. There's a mother, sometimes a mother and a father, and other siblings as well. So the expression of emotions and the understanding of emotions grows up very early in a social environment. So this is another reason why it's difficult to separate the two. Also, we find, based on neurological studies of emotional and social intelligence, that they appear to be along the same neural circuit in the brain. We're talking about the medial prefrontal lobe and subcortical areas like the hypothalamus and the amygdala. Certain areas, the right side of the brain, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to say along the circuitry where emotional intelligence lies and where social intelligence lies. They seem to be intertwined. So from a developmental point of view and from a neurological point of view, it's hard to separate the two, and I've attempted to call it as one term emotional dash social intelligence. That's the derivation behind the two.
Okay. Now, how would you explain the Бар-Он model?
The Бар-Он model of emotional social intelligence suggests that we use emotional and social cues to understand ourselves, understand others, and to interact with people. And it also suggests that it's not just a question of understanding our emotions and other emotions of other people for communication, interpersonal relationship. We have to have some sort of a system that controls emotions and to allow us for emotions to work for us and not against us. And so there has to be some degree of self-control or emotional self-control that sort of filters out and holds down emotions that can be disruptive in communication and understanding things. And then another component of the Бар-Он model has to do not just with understanding emotions, but also to look at or to validate our emotions, to check those emotions out with other people. We feel sad, happy, appreciated by other people or not so, and we check those emotions out with it. We ask questions, we look at facial expressions, we read body language, and all this as an attempt to not just understand emotions, but to validate emotions. Is that correct, the way we're feeling, or the way other people are expressing emotions? So it has to have a built-in reality testing component. Another aspect of the Бар-Он model also appears in other models of emotional intelligence, and that is a combination, you might say, of drive, happiness, contentment, optimism that blends into self-motivation. Self-motivation is composed of all these things together, and some people in the field think that motivation, self-motivation, optimism, or happiness is not part of emotional intelligence, but a byproduct of. That is a possibility. But today I think that the way we use self-motivation is important, and that can help us in the other components of the Бар-Он model, which is understanding our own. We'll be self-motivated to understand ourselves, and self-motivated to interact with other people, and self-motivated to understand our emotions and other emotions, and to apply them in a way that is constructive. So we have to have this other component of self-motivation. Essentially, that is the Бар-Он model. It breaks up into a number of subcomponents, and these are interrelated in those particular areas, in the way we understand ourselves and our emotions and feelings, the way we understand other people, the way we adapt to an ever-changing environment, and the way we control emotions so they work for us and not against us. The way I have constructed the Бар-Он model, that these highly interrelated components in these 5 basic areas are all indicative to a certain extent of how one deals with one's world. Some of these components are more important in responding to an ever-changing world and dealing with challenges that arise every day, and the way of getting more into this on a more scientific basis would be to look at a particular behavior. Like, let's say that if you wanted to study leadership, what makes a good leader or a poor leader, based on the Бар-Он model, the best way of doing this would be to apply the EQI, or another one of my tests I developed based on my conceptual model, and have some way of looking at performance as a leader. And then it's a simple process of examining the impact, using statistics, the impact of those 15 models on leadership. And typically, as a result of these statistical applications, one comes up with a smaller model of the most important elements that predict leadership within the 15 subcomponents. So this is basically the Бар-Он model and how it should be used and applied.
Okay. Well, a lot of talk is around, can you improve social and emotional intelligence? And if so, how do you see people being able to do this?
Today we have a number of findings that indicate, yes, it is possible to increase emotional and social intelligence through developmental programs. And the findings tend to show that it can be developed in children. And so the great application of this is in school systems. If emotional intelligence is such an important aspect of adapting, surviving, and adapting in the world, then why not educate children or enhance these the most important components of emotional social intelligence in children to provide them with tools for living, for getting on in the world, for succeeding in school, and then later in work, interpersonal relationships. So with children, we have findings that show that yes, it can be increased. We do a before and after pulse read of their emotional intelligence. Then typically an intervention is applied, and examining the difference of where they were as a group before and after.
Okay.
We see that there are differences, increases in their emotional and social intelligence. When it comes to adults, we also see that a number of findings indicate that emotional intelligence can be improved with adults as well, both in a one-to-one situation like in individual coaching,
Okay.
and also in group training. And the methods that are used, I would say the most accurate, let's say if we're talking about adults, in a particular organization, my approach would be to go in, would be to test a number of people with the EPI, which is this test that tests based on my model, and it tests emotional intelligence based on my model of emotional intelligence. And then for the same group of people, let's say 100 people, have their performance rated. And then I apply these statistical models which show which of the 15 are the most important, the impact, let's say, performance, occupational performance in that particular is the most.
Okay.
Then you turn these around, and in addition to hiring people that match this model, in addition to having the expertise and experience, job experience and job expertise, and other things that are factored in, we use this information for a developmental program. How would it be used? Let's say within this particular organization that we have this model. These are the high predictors EI predictors of emotional of performance. Then you develop part of your curriculum around the most important factors that predict high performance in this particular organization. You use it in a group. You can develop workshops based and then focus specifically on, say, it's 4 or 5 factors we find out of that predict occupational performance the best in this particular organization. So concentrate on those. Explain what they are, how they're related to performance. Give them exercises, interactive exercises in workshops to concentrate on this. Typically, in addition to group training, you would take within this particular population a number of people and work on an individual level on a one-to-one basis on coaching. We've also found that it's very helpful of putting people together in the same organization, peer counseling, and have them work on, after we've discussed what are the key factors and how they're connected, associated with performance and why they're important, for putting 2 people, 3 people, 4 people together to discuss their weaknesses as well as their strengths and what are they doing to improve their weaknesses.
Okay.
And sort of progress reports from time to time. Another component of teaching people to improve their emotional intelligence, and also if their emotional intelligence is improved, it's not their performance typically goes up. Other ways are online, what we call IBTs, internet-based training. So if they have a combination of a number of didactic modalities. One is input from group training, individual coaching, peer consultation, buddies, putting buddies together in organizations. And another aspect is to give them the opportunity to strengthen their weaker areas online. And then follow-ups, and then there's variations of one-to-one coaching. It can also be followed up not just face-to-face, but later by telephone or emails or continuation of this. So I think the best results that one typically gets on improving emotional intelligence and thereby performance is mixing modalities. Not just based it on one, based on a number of input. Some people learn better by themselves or in groups, or some people prefer not on a one-to-one approach, but to in a group approach. So this is
okay. And I'm hopefully you're okay with this. I'm going to throw in a question based on some things, but what I heard you say was that emotional intelligence practitioners had to be responsible and ethical, and have the experience to be able to do the training and to work with emotional intelligence.
That's right.
And I think that it speaks to your ethics, and it speaks to your passion in the field and your legacy.
Yes.
Can I have you add to that?
Yes, I think so. It's very important. It's a very delicate thing, working with other human beings. And if we're working in an area of emotional intelligence, for example, if I'm an EI practitioner and working with other people, testing, coaching, training, first of all, I think I have to be a role model.
Right.
I think it'd be good if I was really emotionally, socially intelligent and morally competent, dealing with this not as a money maker. I'm going to be out there and make a fortune on this thing called emotional intelligence. It's not as if I'm selling cars or television sets or whatever. I'm working with a very delicate thing, which is a human being. And so it's the way I think I have to provide a positive role model of emotional social intelligence, that I'm aware of my emotions, I'm aware of the emotions of other people, I can convey myself in a constructive manner, not a destructive manner, I'm adaptive, I'm self-motivated. So I think this role model is also didactic for people that I'm coaching. I'm coaching them in emotional intelligence, so as an EI practitioner, I should know the topic very well. What is emotional intelligence? Like,
right.
Some people working in the area, I've spoken with a number of people over the years. Some know the topic very well. Some are very good coaches and trainers. And other people, when you question them about emotional intelligence, the area becomes a bit foggy. So I think that, if I could wave this magic wand and say, who would I like as EI practitioners, people who provide a good role model in themselves, that know the area very well in which they're working. How can I train someone or coach them if I do not know the area well? So you have to read, you have to go to conferences, you have to speak with other people, you have to have mentors. And then another thing I think is very, very important is I think you have to have just a pleasant personality in dealing with people. This is important. If I was just very pessimistic or aggressive with other people, this is not the way of being a good teacher, instructor, trainer, coach. So this combination of areas are extremely important, and I think we do better work when we combine all this together: the knowledge, the role model, the pleasant personality, the understanding of other people, and working with people who are strong in emotional intelligence is easy. There's not too much to work. I think the challenge is when we see low scores on EI tests, and how do you work with that? That's the difficulty.
Right.
So this is especially where this comes into play.
Okay. And what do you see as the greatest application of your work? What has given you the greatest satisfaction?
I would say most of my work is focused now and has been focused on applying emotional intelligence in the workplace. But my passion is, if this is it can be such an important component a driver of performance, why not start not with adults, start in education and applying this in the educational setting, and even before that in parenting, and even before that, why not in couple counseling?
Beautiful.
And so you go back to couple counseling, or working with couples who anticipate having children, and try to enhance areas that you think are important in emotional intelligence that impact performance in life, adaptability, and performance in life, success in life. And then you take these areas within educational, so it's like going from home to school, and in school from a very early age, and I think it has to be multi-year. You have to, it's not just going in at the third grade with a program in emotional intelligence. This has to be a continuation of home, starting from preschool and all the way up, and it has to be age specific for children who are 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, all the way up, and to focus on what we think are the key components in emotional intelligence, the big drivers of performance and getting along with people, and to work on that. And so I think my passion is, or I think that the most important application of not just my work or my model, the other models in emotional intelligence, would be in parenting and education at home and in school, for just preparing children to, after the age of 18, to be more comfortable with themselves, comfortable with others, being able to adapt and to run their lives in a way that creates contentment and satisfaction for them and for other people that they come in contact with.
Okay. And lastly, I told you a little bit, I'm doing some research, and I'd love your opinion on work that I'm doing in emotions and trust. And so I know that you had said earlier it's not an area that you're doing a lot of work in, but you're one of the most well-regarded people in emotional intelligence. I'd love to have just your opinion on how you see emotions and trust working together.
I think, first of all, to give you an honest answer, you're right, I haven't thought about that a lot. I'd have to think about that and get back to you.
Okay.
But I think right now, I can see there is a nexus, there is a connection between that. And it just, as you asked me the question right now, I think it's somehow related to trust. Trust is, I think, a way of sharing emotions, expressing and sharing it. I express emotions, and there's human beings on the other side that are seeing this, that express towards other people. And it's a way of, there's a communication between the one who is broadcasting the emotions, conveying the emotions, and the person who is trying to read these emotions. So there's a basic human communication between emotional expression and emotional recognition. And I think the sharing of very intimate emotions has to do something with trust. I will express emotions to you if I feel I can trust you, and that you won't use these emotions to harm me, but to understand and relate with me. So I think it's something that people broadcast and other people accept. I think it's easier to do that when there's basic trust. If I don't trust you, I'll be more conscious about what I'll express to you. If I do trust you, then I'll share more with you, and you will be able to accept more from me. So I think I have this feeling, have to check it out, that I have to think about it more, that here might be something to do basically with human trust. You're trusting me with something. I'm trusting you with something.
Right.
Something very intimate as emotions, or some emotions. So I think that might be some basis of what you might be getting into.
It's a good direction for me to go and do some more research. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to more opportunities to meet you and talk to you at future conferences and just be able to learn from you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure talking with you.